Imagine the world's most dangerous oil artery suddenly losing its power overnight. In 2026, Iran has activated the first phases of a staggering $100 billion land-based oil bypass pipeline system that completely sidesteps the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a minor detour. This is a strategic earthquake, a hidden network of high-capacity pipelines, pumping stations, and new export terminals stretching hundreds of kilometers across harsh deserts and rugged mountains now threatens to reroute millions of barrels of oil every day away from the vulnerable 21-mile-wide strait that currently carries 21% of the planet's daily oil supply. If this bypass reaches full capacity by 2027, it doesn't just protect Iran from naval blockades and sanctions, it rewrites the entire global energy map, shifts the balance of power in the Middle East, and creates new, unpredictable risks that could trigger the next worldwide oil shock. Intelligence agencies are alarmed. Energy analysts are stunned. The old rules of oil geopolitics are collapsing in real time. What was once considered militarily impossible is now becoming terrifyingly real. And the consequences for the global economy, regional stability, and even the pace of energy transition could be catastrophic. This is the story of Iran's $100 billion oil bypass, the land pipeline that could replace. While international attention remained fixed on naval tensions, missile threats, and tanker incidents in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran was executing one of the most ambitious and secretive infrastructure projects of the 21st century. Deep in its southern territories, a $100 billion land pipeline network has been under accelerated construction, designed explicitly to make the Strait of Hormuz strategically irrelevant for Iranian oil exports, and potentially for other regional producers as well. This mega project connects Iran's vast oil fields in Khuzestan and other southern provinces directly to new and upgraded export terminals along the Gulf of Oman, and the Makran coastline, completely bypassing the narrow and easily blockaded strait. The system includes newly laid high-pressure pipelines, massive underground storage facilities, advanced pumping stations capable of moving enormous volumes of crude, and integrated rail links for added flexibility. Iranian officials describe it as a strategic energy security corridor, but Western and allied intelligence assessments reveal a far more aggressive timeline and scale than previously believed. As of 2026, multiple critical segments have already become operational. Oil is flowing through parts of this new land route, and tanker loading is shifting to safer ports outside the Hormuz choke point. This development represents a fundamental challenge to the established global oil order. For over 4 decades, the Strait of Hormuz has served as both a vital lifeline and a deadly vulnerability for the world economy. Any disruption here, accidental or intentional, has the power to send oil prices soaring and trigger recessions. Iran has now invested heavily to neutralize that vulnerability, turning a potential weakness into a source of new strategic strength. The project's sheer ambition, cost, and speed have caught many observers off guard, raising urgent questions about its full implications for energy markets, regional power dynamics, and future conflict scenarios. The Strait of Hormuz is arguably the single most important choke point in global energy. According to data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration and other reliable sources, approximately 21 million barrels of oil pass through this narrow waterway every single day. That represents roughly 21% of total global petroleum liquids consumption. The strait itself is only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest, with the actual navigable shipping channels being just 2 miles wide in each direction. This extreme concentration of traffic makes it exceptionally vulnerable. A single large tanker disabled in the channel, a deliberate mining operation, missile strikes on facilities, or even a major accident could halt traffic for days, weeks, or longer. History provides clear warnings. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, the so-called tanker war saw hundreds of vessels attacked in and around the strait. In 2019, suspected Iranian attacks on multiple tankers near the strait caused immediate spikes in insurance costs and oil prices. Experts have long modeled worst-case scenarios. A prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz could remove between 20 and 25 million barrels per day from the global market. Such a shock would likely drive oil prices well above $200 per barrel, possibly reaching $300 or more in extreme cases, according to various economic simulations. The resulting inflation, supply chain disruptions, and reduced economic activity could tip major economies into recession and cause widespread hardship, especially in oil-importing nations across Asia and Europe. Iran's $100 billion land bypass project is engineered to mitigate exactly this risk. The network draws from major producing regions and routes oil through a combination of new and upgraded pipelines traversing challenging desert and mountainous terrain. Advanced engineering techniques, including horizontal directional drilling, have been employed to cross difficult geological features. The system incorporates high-capacity pumping stations, sophisticated monitoring technology, and large-scale storage infrastructure. When fully operational, Iranian claims suggest the bypass could handle 8 to 12 million barrels per day or more, significantly reducing dependence on the maritime Strait route. The total estimated investment exceeds $100 billion when accounting for pipelines, ports, rail integration, security measures, and supporting infrastructure. This makes it one of the most expensive single-purpose energy projects ever undertaken. Construction has benefited from technical partnerships, reportedly including expertise and components from countries like China and Russia, allowing Iran to circumvent some effects of Western sanctions. However, the project faces real engineering and environmental challenges: extreme temperatures, seismic activity in parts of the route, water scarcity for construction and operations, and the logistical difficulty of maintaining such a long overland system in remote areas. Despite these obstacles, progress in 2025 to 2026 has been faster than many analysts predicted, with several key segments now active and oil already being diverted. Entering 2026, Iran's land oil bypass is no longer a future concept. It is partially operational and expanding rapidly. Multiple pipeline segments linking major southern oil fields to new coastal terminals have been completed and tested under load. Crude oil is already flowing through sections of the network, bypassing the traditional Hormuz route for loading at safer ports further southeast. Satellite monitoring and open-source intelligence confirm intensified construction activity throughout late 2025 and early 2026. New pumping stations, valve complexes, and storage tanks have appeared in previously quiet desert regions. Port facilities at locations such as Chabahar and additional sites along the Makran coast have seen significant upgrades to handle increased tanker traffic. This shift is already affecting tanker schedules and routing decisions. Some vessels that would have transited the strait are now loading at the new terminals after oil travels overland. The involvement of international partners has been crucial. Reports point to Chinese financing and engineering support, as well as Russian technical assistance in areas like pipeline security and monitoring systems. These collaborations have helped Iran accelerate the project despite ongoing sanctions. Energy markets are taking notice. Traders and analysts are closely watching diversion volumes, with early estimates suggesting several million barrels per month are already moving through the bypass. However, the project is not without setbacks. Harsh environmental conditions, including extreme heat, sandstorms, and occasional seismic tremors, have caused technical issues and delays in certain sections. There have also been reports of minor leaks and maintenance challenges typical of large-scale pipeline systems in difficult terrain. Security concerns are paramount. The long overland route introduces new vulnerabilities to sabotage, insurgent attacks, or even state-sponsored disruption along hundreds of kilometers of exposed pipeline. Iran has reportedly deployed additional military and security forces to protect the network. Environmentally, the construction has left visible scars on desert landscapes, raising concerns about habitat disruption, potential groundwater contamination from leaks, and long-term ecological effects in sensitive arid zones. Despite these challenges, the overall momentum remains strong. Iranian authorities continue to push for faster completion, viewing the bypass as essential for long-term energy independence and resilience. The speed and scale of what has already been achieved in 2026 have forced a rapid reassessment among Western governments, Gulf states, and major oil consumers worldwide. Should Iran's $100 billion land bypass reach near full operational capacity by the end of 2027, the ripple effects could reshape global energy security, Middle East geopolitics, and economic stability in profound ways. Most immediately, the strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz would decline sharply. The ability of external powers to pressure Iran through naval presence or threats of blockade in the strait would be significantly weakened. This shift could embolden Iranian foreign policy and reduce the deterrent value of military options targeting its maritime oil infrastructure. Global oil supply chains would diversify, potentially adding some resilience against purely maritime disruptions. However, this comes at the cost of introducing new land-based vulnerabilities. A successful attack, sabotage campaign, or major natural disaster, such as a powerful earthquake, along the extended pipeline corridor could still remove millions of barrels from the market, creating fresh choke points that are harder to defend and repair quickly. Economic modeling suggests complex outcomes. In the short term, successful activation of the bypass might ease some risk premiums attached to Hormuz traffic, potentially moderating certain price volatility. Yet any serious disruption to the new land routes could trigger even more unpredictable spikes, as repair timelines for overland infrastructure in remote areas differ from maritime incidents. By late 2027, projections indicate that 40% to 60% or more of Iran's oil exports could be routed through the bypass system. This would likely prompt neighboring Gulf producers, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and others, to accelerate their own diversification and redundancy projects, possibly sparking a broader regional race to build alternative export infrastructure. Environmental impacts are substantial and concerning. The massive construction footprint has already altered large stretches of desert and mountain ecosystems. Pipeline operations carry ongoing risks of spills or leaks, which in remote arid regions could contaminate scarce groundwater resources and affect local biodiversity over wide areas. Expanded oil export capacity may also slow the global transition away from fossil fuels by making supply more resilient to geopolitical shocks. On the geopolitical front, the project strengthens Iran's position vis-à-vis potential adversaries. Reduced immediate economic vulnerability to strait closure or attacks on export terminals lowers the cost of escalation in future crises. This dynamic makes conflict scenarios more complex and potentially more dangerous, as traditional pressure points lose effectiveness. China, a major importer of Iranian crude, appears to have a strategic interest in the project's success, seeking more secure overland or alternative maritime options away from vulnerable sea lanes subject to U.S. or allied naval influence. This realignment could accelerate the emergence of a more multipolar energy landscape. In a worst-case 2027 scenario, a combination of heightened regional tensions, sabotage attempts on the new pipelines, and possible spillover conflicts could still result in major supply disruptions. Some analyses warn that such events could drive oil prices toward or beyond $250 per barrel, deeper and more prolonged than the shocks of the 1970s. The cascading effects on inflation, transportation, manufacturing, and food security worldwide would be severe. There are also longer-term questions about infrastructure resilience. The new pipeline network traverses seismically active zones in parts of Iran. A major earthquake could cause widespread damage that is extremely costly and time-consuming to repair, especially under sanctions limiting access to advanced materials and technology. For major oil importing regions, Europe, India, Japan, South Korea, and China, this shift forces a fundamental rethink of energy security strategies. Reliance on Middle Eastern oil becomes even more entangled with complex land and sea route risks. As 2027 unfolds, the world may be witnessing the slow decline of the Strait of Hormuz's dominance as the primary energy artery of the Middle East, replaced instead by a more fragmented, technologically complex, and potentially more fragile network of land corridors. The full story of Iran's $100 billion gamble is still being written. Its success or failure, and the new risks it introduces, will likely define energy geopolitics for decades to come. Iran's $100 billion oil bypass is rapidly moving from ambitious plan to operational reality in 2026 with the potential to fundamentally transform global energy flows and power dynamics by 2027. What began as a defensive measure against naval vulnerabilities has evolved into a project with far-reaching consequences for economies, ecosystems, and international relations. The coming months and years will reveal whether this massive land pipeline brings greater stability to Iran's exports or simply creates a new set of dangerous vulnerabilities inland. Will the old maritime choke point of Hormuz fade into strategic irrelevance, or will the risks simply multiply across a more complex network? The answers will shape the future of energy security for billions of people worldwide.